Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, John Arnold, Armand Kafai. Before we get started, of course, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, subscribe. If you're listening on podcast, give us a 5-star rating. We do appreciate it a lot. It helps us grow the channel quite a bit. And boys, we have got 6 really good topics, I think, this week in the North American soccer world. So let's hop into it. This is The Hex. 15 matches of the MLS slate last weekend, guys. I obviously there's been 15 match weeks so far, but it's kind of crazy. I remember when there was like 6 and you were excited about it. So a 15 match slate. So plenty of winners to choose from as we started off with our winners of the weekend. And John, someone achieved something that has not been done very often. And that's where we're going to start.
Well, yeah, my winner of the weekend is Brian White. Anybody who scores a poker, I'm going to consider for the winner of the weekend. White with the 4 of a kind against Austin FC in a 5-1 victory. Not only is this big for Brian White, not only is it great to score 4 goals in a game, but also this comes at a time where people are thinking, oh, the U.S. national team doesn't really have an established center forward healthy, and also looking at how legit Vancouver is. This is a team that's in the semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup that is leading the Western Conference. And you start to say, like, how legit is this team? They look extremely legit. Austin wasn't good. Mistakes that led to goals. But anytime that team gets plastered 5-1 in the modern MLS, you have to take the team that's doing the plastering seriously, and they wouldn't have been doing it as convincingly without White, without his finishing. The fact that we've talked about him as like an underrated player, an under the radar player for a long time. There have been supporters of his. Armand, I know the underlying numbers are usually quite good, but like, he's playing at a level and counting stats at a level where you cannot ignore this anymore. And for me, that's why he's a winner of the weekend.
Austin had allowed in their previous 7 games 4 goals, and Brian White did it in 90 minutes on Saturday night. Armand,
he was incredible, and when you look at the defense that Austin had to start the year, the fact that Vancouver just walked in and picked them apart on a short week as well is
coming 2,500 miles from Mexico City to Vancouver. Like if there's any weekend to just say, hey, let's just keep it tight. 0-0. Maybe we pick a 1-0 win.
It would be that weekend against that team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although maybe there's an altitude superhero effect where they were like, they got acclimated and then they're like, boo, 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 we feel amazing.
Yeah. And so for my winner of the week, I'm going to a team that it's kind of hard to say they're under the radar because they're one of 2 undefeated teams in the league along with Miami. But I'm going with the Columbus Crew who, they sold their best player, Cucho Hernandez. He's been doing very well in La Liga. And I mean, it's not like we didn't expect them to figure it out. They've been grinding out results so far this year, unimpressively, totally understandably speaking. But I watched their entire game against St. Louis on Sunday night. And I had to say it was the first time that I've seen Columbus look like Columbus in a long time. And I know that St. Louis they were missing like half of their team, and I get it, but this was the first time, so they outpassed their opponent by almost 2-1. This was the first time we've seen them do that.
Huh?
The numbers were crazy, and that is Nancy ball. And they allowed kind of a fluky goal to St. Louis to take the lead, and yet you never felt like for a second, there was something about that goal that just like turned a switch on. You never felt for a second like they weren't going to win that game. And it just felt like the swagger was back a little bit. And they were like, man, let's just play the way we want to play. And it made me really happy to see inside.
You say Columbus looks like Columbus. I sort of was like, oh, the Daniel Gazdag trade. Yeah, well, they need a 9 is kind of what I was thinking. But it's like you see him even in his debut with like 35, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, I think. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is going to work.
He completed 32 out of 33 passes in 45 minutes. And then, Armand, we were talking about this over text. You don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, lots of people were saying Gazdag wouldn't work. Like you'll kind of say people are saying something that no one actually said.
Yeah, who's saying that? Yeah.
Who's saying that? But still, like, you wonder, this guy, like, I feel like now, one of my other notes I wrote was, I feel like now Columbus truly is a number 9 away from far and away being the best team in MLS again.
And with Gazdag, you get a guy, Gazdag, You get a guy
that,
Try another pronunciation, then why not?
I'm just gonna throw a bunch to the wall and see if they stick. Or look at the pronunciation guide tonight. When you look at a player like Gazdog, he wasn't a player that really was in possession as much in Philadelphia. They played that really well. Ernst Tanner thinks they played possession soccer. I don't know what he's saying, to be honest with you. And I mean, shout out to him, right? He had that quote saying, We've now seen it's the right decision to fire Jim Curtin, and they haven't won a game in 3 games since he said that.
Are we just saying Ernst Harrison?
Yeah, essentially.
Nico Tanner?
But now you see him in possession. He looks super comfortable on the ball. And the way that they were moving off the ball down, I don't know if
beautiful.
it was amazing. It was so fun to watch. I mean,
You got Farsi going on one side, Arston going on the other side. Nagbe's making the runs in when he wants to. It's no team plays the way that they play in MLS. That's why it was just like so nice to watch, right?
Yep. And adding that number 10 that they've been finally looking for to fill in, I think was really nice for them. Man, my big winner of the week. I know y'all were kind of confused when I put this on the rundown because y'all think I was trying to hijack a segment. I was not. It's cheap owners.
That was a joke.
It was cheap owners. And you say, why are you saying cheap owners? Like cheaper owners, I'll probably say. Atlanta United, man, a team that is struggling right now after spending $50 million on their front line. Got shut out by the New England Revolution at home. And now you might say, ball sometimes doesn't go in. This has been a problem for almost 7-8 games now, or 7 games outside of the NYCFC. Actually, I'll say 6. The Montreal result was also good as well. Outside of those 2 games,
it's like the Gazdag pronunciation. It could be 4, it could be 3.
They've struggled for a minute.
They've
played 30 good minutes this year.
They haven't been great. Latte Loth, Almiron, Moranchuk, Saba are all kind of struggling to kind of fit together. Cleach, who we all thought was a really savvy move to pull from DC, has not been great as well. And another example I want to pull is Austin. Austin has spent lots of money on Uzuni and Brandon Vasquez in the front line, and they cannot score goals at all. I mean, those 2 players are definitely struggling as well. Whether you say that might be a symptom of the Nico Estevez system or not, they can't score regardless. If you're an owner that's not spending as much and your coach is coming in saying, hey, we need to spend more, you could easily point at those 2, and maybe a couple other examples as well, and say, hey, these aren't really working out. Why do we need to spend as much? And if you're a coach, you're like, Vancouver didn't spend that much in the offseason, and look where they're at. They just switched their coach. We can kind of go down the list on some teams. Charlotte didn't spend that much this offseason, and yes, they spent a little bit in the season prior, and they're sitting second in the Eastern Conference. Now, will those trends hold? We don't know. But if you're a cheap owner, you're kind of smiling right now, saying, "Hey, we don't have to spend that much. The other team are spending big, and the results aren't showing."
All right, guys, time for me to get on my soapbox here because I was hot on Sunday evening.
Oh boy.
So had a beautiful Sunday morning. Okay, went out to the Bluebonnet Festival in Ennis. It was lovely. The flowers are blooming, and I thought Sunday afternoon.
They better be. It's a festival for flowers.
Yeah,
and
the Bluebonnet Festival.
They are indeed blooming. And I thought Sunday afternoon was looking great. On the couch, we got the Masters, great leaderboard. Not a huge golf guy, but look, if you're not watching the back nine of the Masters, right? Come on. And we had Chicago, Inter Miami, sold out or nearly sold out Soldier Field, 3:30 kickoff, something like that. Great Sunday afternoon ahead. So I'm watching the match, and everything about this Chicago Inter Miami match was why we hate Greg Berhalter. Because if you look at Chicago in their first month of the season, 2 goals, 3 goals. The games were so fun, wide open, and the Fire are finally playing this attacking style we've been hoping to see out of them. And then they talked about on the broadcast how basically Berhalter had told them during the week that the games were too open and that they needed to tighten them up. So what do you do when you have your biggest crowd in team history, 62,358 people? He brings the reins in, he throttles down, he goes from 4th gear to 2nd gear, and he says, guys, we're just going to hold the ball. We're going to keep it as tight as possible. We're not going to lose this game. We're not going to create a spectacle for these fans. They had 23 progressive passes in the match, which was the second fewest in MLS. And I'm guessing most of those were in the last 10 minutes when the game just randomly opened up. And what made me really mad about it was, again, you are at home in front of the biggest crowd in your history. And this is the way you come out. And look, they got a point. Bully for them, I guess. A point against Inter Miami, not a bad result. But I feel like there is a responsibility there when you are playing in games like this that you need to open up the field and you need to score goals. And at the end of the day, this is about entertainment. And so I kind of wanted to ask you guys, do you agree with that? Or do you think the result justifies the way that Chicago played that game? Their crowd, by the way, if you go back and watch about 40th minute, they have the ball and they're just passing the ball across the back line. They pass it back to Brady. The crowd started booing them. During the end of the first half, at home, their crowd was booing them. They did not create a chance over 0.1 XG in the match. But are they justified? It finishes 0-0.
Yes. Greg Berhalter's job is not to play sexy soccer. His job is not to play a style that gets the Soldier Field casuals who showed up for one game to see Lionel Messi cheering.
I disagree.
His job is to win soccer games. If he goes out there and plays open and Chicago Fire loses 3-0 against Inter Miami, he's in our losers of the weekend. His job is to get points, get his team to the playoffs, and hey, there's another marketing opportunity to get people into the stands. If they were so bored by this spectacle that they're not going back, they're probably not going to be the fans that are going to show up for the playoffs anyway. I actually think that his old job, you do have a bit more responsibility as a national team manager, where you're usually coming in saying, we want this style to reflect our nation's values. We want this style to reflect the talent of our country. We want to play this open style. I think as a club manager, man, weren't you praising Eric Ramsey last week for Minnesota United?
Stop it, though. No, that's a completely different situation because I'm taking into account.
Why should I have to play hard when Messi shows up? Or why should I have to play open when Messi shows up? That's the exact time I should not do that.
No, but if you're Greg Berhalter, you want the stadium full does give you an impact over a season. A fuller stadium does give you a home field advantage.
But not if these jokers are going to cheer for the other team, man. Or if I'm trying to do something and they're booing it, well, okay, well, I'm going to do my own thing.
Okay, but I don't agree with that at all. And if you look at their results this year, they didn't lose. They went on a 5-game unbeaten streak where they did allow goals in all of those games. They won 3 in a row, 3-1, 2-1, 3-1. I was looking forward to watching the Fire every week, and the crowd in Chicago is not a stupid crowd. They've watched bad Chicago Fire teams for the last decade, boring Chicago Fire teams, and then they bring Miami in, and what do? Completely throttle it down. To me, I think he does have a responsibility. Armand, how do you feel?
If you talk to a coach, they will say, "We want to play good at home, but we want to play against a team in a way that, maximize our strengths to win, etc." But Daniel, I gotta be honest, I'm with you. When you're at home, especially in MLS, when home field advantage is such a big advantage, for lack of a better word.
People.
Yeah, you should be the onus to entertain
50,000 people, but how many thousands of them were wearing pink Messi jerseys that they bought in the parking lot before?
It really doesn't matter, because if you give fans a reason to come back, they will come back. And if they say entertaining soccer, they'll be like, well, hey, maybe my local team is actually really good. I'm
gonna get hired as the most entertaining MLS coach. I'm gonna line up a team with 1 goalkeeper and 10 forwards, and we're going to lose every game 7-2.
That's a crazy high.
You're taking up these goals.
You're taking it completely to okay.
It could end up 0-0, and if you're still entertaining, you're still entertaining. But the way that they were playing was not entertaining at all. And if you again are at home, when you are at home in MLS, where home field, again, I keep mentioning this, is a big advantage in a season that we know is super long, and some results don't matter. Some results generally don't matter. Why not throw caution to the wind in some moments when Miami is coming off a short week?
Because listen, man, if you throw out the Messi factor of this game, and this is just if it's a Columbus Crew instead of Inter Miami, that's there. The Columbus Crew, still an undefeated team. We're just talking about how good they are. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later. If it's the Columbus Crew that comes in there, you're not going to nitpick and pick apart if they decide this is one of the best teams in our league, this is one of the best teams in the conference that we're going to try and get points off of to try and get into the playoffs. You say, oh, yeah, sometimes you have to change your style against a team that's going to be doing something different, that has a player that's an absolute difference maker. Sometimes you have to do that, and I don't think that because fans showed up to this one, that you should suddenly say, we're not going to be able to put the exact game style that we want. Yeah, it'd be great if the 50,000 fans were pushing you to victory. Look at like Clásico Regio, where Tigres scores 2 goals after the 90th minute, truly with these fans backing them, singing and pushing them on. It's not the atmosphere that we saw at Soldier Field, man. And so
But
why
there's a
would you
reason
feel
for
that it's gonna?
But that's why the atmosphere was that way, because they were playing like garbage, and the fans knew it. That's the Chicago soccer fans are not stupid. Like, they knew what was going on.
How many of them are there to see the fire, and how many of them are there to see Messi?
Okay, so let's not try, right? So, okay, that guy that's
He
wearing,
did try, and he got a point
but that guy that's wearing a Messi jersey,
A point at home is pretty bad, though, man.
that kid that's wearing a Messi
In
jersey,
MLS.
against the best team in the league. Against the last year's Supporters Shield winners.
Vancouver's best team in the league.
maybe he goes and buys a Brian Gutierrez jersey after the game, because Brian Gutierrez is an amazing he's a young number 10 who's from Chicago. Why not tell the story and let him
He created 4
something
chances in the game, most chances in the match.
and try to do that, right? And
If
so
it's such an intelligent soccer fan, then why isn't he saying, "Oh wow, even though the team played a little boring, Gutierrez created 4 chances"?
but he wants to see goals. They want to see goals. And you look at
Man, Brad Berhalter would have wanted to see a goal.
But I'll compare it to St. Louis. And St. Louis lost last weekend, and they were missing 7 players, and they played against the Columbus Crew. But they were pushing the entire game, and they were pushing in the second half, and the crowd got behind them. In the last 20 minutes, they could have gotten a point. And that message, I'm forgetting the coach's name in St. Louis.
Olaf something.
Olaf
Melberg.
Melberg, yeah. Melberg sends a message to his team. I don't care if you're down 7 players or whatever. We can get a result. To me, Berhalter sends a message. Berhalter sends a message to his team. We don't have this. We're not as good as this other team. We're going to have to play this way. And we've seen that with the national team in the past, where he sends this message to them, and then they come out and they're nervous and they don't have confidence. And hey, let's go beat this team instead of let's just try to grind in the result.
Who got the better result? Who got more points? The St. Louis City or Chicago?
In a 1 week sample. Obviously Chicago
You're saying this coach went for it against one of the best teams in the league and he lost. Good. And this coach didn't go for it as aggressively and he got 1 point, didn't lose. Bad.
Over a 34 game season, I think that there can be positives to that. Speaking of big crowds in NFL stadiums, this weekend, probably the marquee matchup so far of the MLS season, without a doubt. Miami, the 2 undefeated teams in MLS. Inter Miami is traveling to face the Columbus Crew, but they're not going to Columbus. They're going about 150 miles north to Cleveland, aka the Mistake by the Lake, to face the Columbus Crew. And they're going to be playing it in Huntington Bank Field, which is 67,000 capacity NFL stadium. The Crew have built a great home field advantage at lower.com field since it opened, Armand. Do you think this is a good move, though, by Columbus to create this marquee matchup?
Well, I feel like the only reason why they're moving it to Cleveland, which I didn't realize it was, I'm not really used to Ohio geography. I didn't realize it was 2 hours away.
146 miles from lower.com field to Huntington Bank Field.
Yeah, that seems like a long way for me. Like, I don't know if I want to drive 2 hours for a game.
Dallas to Austin, right? Like almost.
Yeah.
Dallas
Well, I mean, 2/3 of Dallas to Austin. You might end up in Temple.
Waco.
Yeah.
Or Waco.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like the equivalent of FC Dallas playing at McLean.
Yes.
Against Miami.
Yeah.
I hate it.
That's Baylor.
They should. What if they did that? What if they put it in Waco?
That would actually be hilarious. That I would go just for the spectacles, because that'd be absolutely hilarious. But I hate it in this instance. And I feel like the only reason why they're doing it, and I'm pretty sure it is because the Haslams also own both teams. Now look, I understand that the Messi effect is real, and they are definitely playing games in bigger stadiums. One thing I do respect about what FC Dallas does is their kind of insistence to play in their stadium. Hey, we're gonna play in our stadium where our fans know where we are and can get the intimate environment.
Extremely intimate now that only.
Now it's extremely intimate with the
contract that they have.
Yeah. But also they could play there if they wanted to. But for me, like, just to kind of finish out my point, 2 hours away again. It's a long way, and for those season ticket holders, for those people, I feel like it's a bit unfair to play in there. I understand from a team standpoint why they would do it. I understand from a money standpoint why they would do it. But from a fan, more of a sporting point, you kind of lose your home field advantage as well too. Going to a foreign environment, going to a foreign grass field, etc. against Miami, who's a team you're facing that in a important home game matchup that you only get one of those. From a sporting perspective, I would hate it. If I was a coach, I'd be pissed. Obviously, you gotta live with what's going on. But for me, John, I'm against it.
Yeah, I need to let you guys know that you'll be reading more about this later this week on MLSsoccer.com in an article by me. So I can give a little bit more context and background to this. Yes, of course, the Haslam link is very important. And this is actually something they wanted to do before. Remember, the Crew almost played Inter Miami and Messi in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they were going to play that game in Cleveland, which I think would have been an even bigger decision because that's an extremely competitive moment and you need that home field advantage. One thing that I think is relevant two things that I think are really relevant that the Crew officials I've talked to have mentioned. First of all, they have always had this idea since the Haslams took over and kept the team in Columbus, but they felt like they needed to find the right time after winning over Columbus, establishing Columbus as the place to be, as the home of the Crew. Hey, this team isn't moving to Cleveland. This team's not going anywhere. They took the All-Star game to Columbus. They had the Leagues Cup final, multiple MLS Cup finals, multiple trophies. So the Crew do feel relevant. They do, and it does. They feel very relevant in Columbus. And I think, like Daniel, I know you were there for All-Star as well. I think we had a coffee or a beer or something. It feels like the Crew matter to see me.
Yes.
To see Columbus. It feels like they matter. The other thing to note is that they are doing everything they can to do right by the season ticket holders for this game. There are shuttles, there are food and beverage packages. Yes, it's 2 hours. That's a long way, and I do think that's extremely relevant. I feel like this ultimately, yeah, you're probably right. Not good for the soccer side, not good for maybe your home field advantage, but overall, it's the reality of the kind of the moment we live in. And I do think in some ways it's inventive where we talk about small market teams with problem, like how do you kind of win new fans? How do you make people care about what you're offering? How do you win people over from other parts of the city that aren't just in that Columbus bubble? They're trying something. We'll see if it works for them.
Armand, what did you say when we were joking about FC Dallas playing a game at McLean Stadium in Baylor?
I'd go for the spectacle because it was just hilarious.
You proved the exact point. I would go for the spectacle. And that is what MLS does not do a good enough job of, is creating spectacle matches like this. Armand, me and you and John still talk all the time about the game we went to at the Cotton Bowl, the NHL Winter Classic. I don't remember almost any Stars game. The last few I've been to, they've lost by like 4 goals. So I do remember those. But I still say that was one of probably the top 10 sporting events I've ever been to. It was an amazing spectacle and really solidified fandom for me with the Stars. I see the same thing. MLS needs to create more spectacles like this. We've seen it with the Stadium Series. We've seen it with Major League Baseball playing games in London and Japan, etc. NFL playing games in Europe. I don't think MLS does a good enough job of this. And to me, I totally support it because, again, you said, John, I would not support CONCACAF Champions Cup, some one-off match where it's like a playoff, of course. But when we're talking about 1 out of 34, not to mention Cleveland has hosted Messi in Miami like 2 or 3 times in the last few years at lower.com field, right? So it's like
Columbus.
Yeah, sorry. They've hosted them quite a bit. So it's not like this is Dallas where it would be the only Messi match for like 4 years or something like that. And they played it in Waco. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's going to create a great spectacle again. I think the match is on Saturday afternoon. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great.
One quick point that you make about the spectacle, about these other leagues doing these one-off games. It's not going to be long until other soccer leagues are doing that in the U.S. If MLS can't play in the same sandbox, then I do think they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Mid last week, the MLS Board of Governors met and they voted to kick the can down the road for potentially moving the MLS schedule to a fall-spring schedule from what it is now. It won't happen until at least 2027, ensuring MLS is going to be taking probably a 6-week break during the World Cup. Armand, is this the right move should they be doing this? And is this the right move to kick the can down the road in general?
So I think the break will go from I'd probably say late May to the end of the World Cup, so July. So
about 6 weeks, yep.
Yeah, but that'll be a massive break in the season for those teams.
And we've seen 2 and 3 week breaks in Gold Cup where it's okay, we break during the group stage, but this is probably going to be twice as long as any.
Or even in the playoffs when you see that big 2-week break for the international break.
Sure.
In November, which kills all momentum for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. Look, you can have your feelings on whether you should do this or not. I personally am the camp that you should switch the schedule to align and have your most important games be in a
You're not in the camp, bro. You lead the parade, man.
Well,
I don't know how, but you
I-
became the
like-
leading advocate for this last week,
You're
and
the
I was not
capo.
ready for. I was
Yeah.
not ready for it.
You're the
Yeah,
capo.
I was. I think MLS.
Dale, fall spring schedule, vamos a ganar.
Look, the benefits of it, and you can schedule around some of the pitfalls of it, right? Like, yes, there's some places in the U.S. that cannot, and I got yelled at my Blue Sky mentions like crazy for saying, "Oh, Toronto has to play in January." No, Toronto does not have to play in January, and Toronto has to play in February if it doesn't want to. You can plan around this. Yes, will it be a little bit wonky with the scheduling towards the end of a year? Yes, but will the benefits when MLS isn't vulnerable to the summer window of the European clubs, is that a benefit? I think it is, and I think it would help MLS in the long run to have its most important marquee matchups happen where there isn't as much competition with the most popular sport in the United States, with football, with NFL, with college football. Daniel, you ripped me in an episode for saying that I didn't think that the SEC championship would impact the Western Conference final. I rescind that statement. That was a dumb statement from me. I apologize. You were right. It is dumb. It is very dumb to go against them. And we saw that in the MLS Cup ratings, which you might say, oh, a lot of people are watching on Apple TV. I'm not exactly sure about that. You can see it reflected in those those matchups. But guys, like, whether you're for it or not, here's the biggest problem I have with it.
Yep.
Why is it coming to vote now?
Yep.
You are looking to implement a change in 2026 that's going to cause major infrastructure changes. You need heated fields. You need to understand the impact that's going to make on training facilities where teams that do have snow, that, how do you subsidize first things?
On your contract.
There was no plan for this. You'd have to adjust the CBA as well too, because the CBA ends at the end of a 2027 season. Therefore, you'd have to adjust the CBA to account for the 2027-2028 season as it goes through. Why is this coming to vote now? I always point to the Japanese example because they're a country that have similar issues when it comes to the soccer side, when it comes to this stuff. And guess what they did? They put this to discussion in 2023. They voted to enact it in December of 2023. Now you have 2 full years to go through with this process. Why would you want to do this in 2027, guys? You're basically sacrificing a second season that's going to have a weird start to it to then implement it in 2027. I just don't get it. And for me, the bigger issue is, why is this such almost a reactive instead of a proactive approach?
You're going to hear me saying this in a vertical video I'm going to publish this week, but I think both MLS owners and Liga MX owners have huge decision paralysis around the 2026 World Cup. You have some people on one side of an issue, some people on another, and no one wants to make the decision that's going to upset this camp, with the potential that the World Cup either skyrockets your club values because soccer sees unprecedented growth in North America, or it's a bit of a bust, it's not as good as people think, and you start to see those club values decrease or stay flat. No one wants to do anything crazy before the tournament because everyone's afraid of missing out on either a huge boost or doing something that then people point the finger after and say, you lost value because of this. With Liga MX, of course, it's the investment, the private equity potentially coming in, federating the TV deal. With MLS, it seems like it's this and several other things that were like, are the owners going to do something about Messi being in the league? And are they going to change the salary? And are they going to do the fall? And it just feels like every time we're talking about a major decision, and some owners and some fans, some journalists line up on one side and some line up on the other. And right now it's maybe we'll decide that in 2027. That's actually not a bad strategy. If you say that, we're going to wait and see what the World Cup bump is. But it feels like a missed opportunity if you had said maybe in 2022, we're going to do this in 3-4 years and try and get that leverage from 2026.
And Armand, you made the great point of, if the CBA is ending in, I didn't realize that the CBA is up in 2027. Well, that tells you it's not happening in 2027 either. There's no way they would update it right at the end of a CBA and potentially have a league go on lockout in the middle of the season. So that means it's going to be pushed to 2028 for a vote. And at the end of the day, again, I think you nailed it it's not so much whether you do it or you don't do it. It's just be decisive about it. Have a reason why. It's because there can be pros and cons. I'm on your side too of moving the schedule, but right now it doesn't seem like there's even really the pros and cons being debated.
I think, but that's the thing. I think by kicking the can down the road, you're essentially saying status quo, right? Oh, laissez-faire, nothing changes, and that's fine. But when you don't make a decision, that is a decision.
Yeah, and just to wrap a bow on this, say what you want about the change, whatever. Just MLS consistently just seems a little unprepared in big situations. The Messi mania, right? Like I guess that's what we're gonna call it, right? MLS, I think has done an okay job at it, but forget about maybe loosening the salary rules and all that stuff, but maybe building out the league outside of just Messi. You know, like we always talk about it, it feels like it's just Messi and friends. Fans feel like that as well too. You have to be proactive in something like this, and I think they had a feeling Messi was going to come. Instead, we're sitting here still talking about, are they capitalizing on the Messi moment when we've been a part of the Messi moment for 2.5 years now?
Topic number 5, shifting a little bit away from MLS, but still on the periphery. CONCACAF Champions Cup into the semifinals now. Thrilling games. We're not going to talk so much about the matchups, but Club America out. There'll be plenty of time to compare. And we are going to have MLS versus MLS and Liga MX versus Liga MX, meaning we will have a Mexican versus American club CONCACAF Champions Cup final, which will be great.
Could be a Canadian club. Could be a Canadian club.
That's true. Actually, that's a great point. It'll be MLS versus Liga MX.
Yes.
My apologies to my dear friends in Vancouver. But John, what we don't know is where the hell they're going to play this game. And it is 6 weeks away. What is going on here?
Well, what's going on is that in the CONCACAF Champions Cup regulations this year, 2025, as past years, the regulations actually state the final will be at a neutral location selected by CONCACAF, but they can also award the host site to the finalists, to one of the finalists if they want to, and you do that by performance in the tournament. So right now it looks nearly impossible if Inter Miami wins for them not to be the team that would be awarded the host privileges if CONCACAF decides to do that. I think that that's probably what's going to happen. To me, that's the most kind of logical situation, is that Miami wins and hosts, but if Cruz Azul makes the final, then they would probably host. But even then, they don't have an actual sort of permanent home of their own. They're playing right now in the CEU in Pumas' stadium on the campus of UNAM, the university in Mexico City. So they probably can host there, but you don't really know. So I'm not really sure what would happen if Miami doesn't make the final. I think if they make it, they'll probably host either at Hard Rock or even maybe at Chase. But CONCACAF, I think, is just in wait-and-see mode, trying to figure out exactly what they want to do. Look, the other thing is, if you said right now, oh, the neutral site final is going to be, and it wouldn't be here, but it's going to be at SoFi Stadium in L.A. I think Kendrick Lamar is maybe playing there the day before or day after, but his tour is kind of screwing up some potential venues for CONCACAF. And yes, Los Angeles and Vegas is both not going to happen. But let's say you said that, and then the final is Vancouver Whitecaps against Tigres. It'd be difficult to fill a U.S. stadium for that, as passionate as Tigres fans are, as great as many Vancouver Whitecaps fans are. Probably not going to be able to fill a 70,000 or whatever it is seat stadium. So I do think that CONCACAF is in wait-and-see mode, kind of thinking, we're probably putting this in Miami, but if they don't make it, what do we do?
But then if they do put it in Miami, okay, let's say they put it at Hard Rock. Then on consecutive weekends, you're going to have Miami playing these marquee games at Hard Rock, where you have the CONCACAF Champions Cup final one week, and then they have to play Alec Lee, the opening game of the Club World Cup, the very next weekend at Hard Rock again. Does it not get to a little bit of fatigue at that point, like, and just oversaturation? Maybe I'm overthinking.
Probably, but like, if you think there's more Cruz Azul fans or Al Ahly fans in Miami?
Al Ahly.
I mean, I don't think so, bro. We do need to figure out what we talked last week about, like, surprise diasporas.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Miami is one, because I've been to a Cruz Azul Inter Miami game in Miami, and a lot of fans there from Cruz Azul. But it would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, look, yes, it's possible there is fatigue for these games. It's possible you stick it at a different site, but kind of champagne problems, and also like the problem of, hey, this is. You're asking, U.S. fans are just being asked to keep shelling out and shelling out and shelling out for these things. And yeah, like, maybe at a certain point it dries up, and maybe at a certain point it's not the worst thing, right? I mean, sporting wise.
John, you keep mentioning like shelling out. You're 100% right. I mean, I was looking at the tickets for the Club World Cup at the opening match. It's like $250, like to get in. I mean, they're definitely trying to
For now.
capitalize on. Yeah, or yeah, I'm not. That's not happening on to watch Al Ali Inter Miami. But you're right about the fatigue because we're consistently seeing match after match that is, in my opinion, a lot of them are overpriced to the point to where, I mean, we're going to see a bunch of those in 2026 with the World Cup. I mean, that's why the whole reason why the World Cup's here, why the whole reason the World Cup's expanded as well too. They're trying to capitalize on the U.S. market where the U.S. dollar is super high up, and if they make it, I really think they should put it in the Gardens. I mean, compared to putting it in a place like it's not Cleveland where it's 2 hours away, that creates another quote unquote spectacle. But D-Rob, it's a good point that they would play back to back in the Dolphins Stadium, which
Not
to
just
me
back
is
to back, back to back to back, because they have another match there against Palmeiras.
that's true. The thing is, it is, I would say, the most soccer-looking stadium. It's definitely got.
No
It's
problems
like
with the stadium.
yeah, it is
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
got
Ross
soccer
himself,
lore.
Stephen Ross, is like built that partly to host games like
Yep.
that. I mean, I think not necessarily knowing Inter Miami and Messi were going to be there, but this is a guy who's tried to kind of spearhead the let's play important games in the U.S. movement. And, I don't think it'd be an issue, but yeah, like you are asking fans for a lot. Look, man, like I wonder if Messi is the bandage that covers all wounds.
I mean, we're going to find out, and the unfortunate thing is, if Azteca was open in Miami versus Cruz Azul final at Azteca would, or even Tigres, I don't think it would matter. That would be an amazing spectacle, but they got to get there first. So maybe it won't be at BC Place, though. I think we can all feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, no way.
And finally, guys, to wrap up the week, Ryan O'Hanlon of ESPN wrote an interesting piece about Gio Reyna for ESPN this week, and he wasn't given any favors with the headline of "Is it time for USMNT fans to give up on Gio Reyna?" which is not actually what the article is about, but it was a very interesting note of Reyna's. He basically used Reyna's lack of movement and the analytics behind how fast is he running to say that he is not, to kind of justify why is he not getting enough playing time for Borussia Dortmund, which he's not. He didn't play in Der Klassiker this last weekend, and I mean he's pretty clearly going to be on the move. But to kind of justify that, and as a data point to show why maybe it's time for him to, he could be at issues with the U.S. national team. And I thought it was very interesting because at the same time it brings up a lot of points. One, which I'm sure Armand will want to talk about. How do we use both the sample size and that stat to tell a story? But two, to me, what was so interesting is we look at Reyna, and it's a whole discussion around the national team. This is a guy who 12 months ago was the CONCACAF Nations League player of the weekend. He basically won the tournament for them in a lot of ways. I don't want to say player of the tournament because it's basically like analyzing two games, but he was the player of the weekend on a very important weekend, highly contributing to the U.S. men's national team. And you would have thought his name for the 2026 World Cup, I mean, this is a guy who will be on the roster. Now I'm thinking, man, he's not playing right now. Maybe a loan move to MLS for the last half of the season. You look at the players in that number 10 role, even a Diego Luna, a Brendan Aronson, the guys behind Pulisic, his name is not set in stone on a year that we're a year out from naming this roster. He has to go somewhere where he's going to play for the next 12 months.
D-Rob, you pointed out the sample size of Ryan. Ryan's a really smart guy. I really enjoy his database
not trying to catch any strays.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing his best. I think to fill something there because I think if you talk to him on the record, he would probably say I would never use a 300 a minute sample size. It's way too small of a sample size for us to analyze. 300 minutes is nothing, right? Like
3 matches.
That's barely 3 games.
Yeah.
But when you look at the whole thing, when it talks about Gio Reyna, I'm kind of the camp of, hey, put him in MLS. Let him kind of regain his confidence. We've seen a guy like Diego Luna who's been really great in MLS, kind of regain that confidence, regain that. And we saw that kind of resulting in that third place game against Canada where he had that assist. I think Reyna needs consistent playing time. Look, you can train against the best players. You can practice against the best players, but when it comes to consistent game time, you need that. And MLS, for its faults, would be a spot where I think Gio Reyna would get playing time because his fee would be quite a bit to bring him into MLS. I think you'd be a borderline, depending on how much Dortmund covers, a DP or a TAM player. It'd be super.
Dortmund wants him to play though. It raises his value, right?
Right, and he would definitely play quite a bit. So I mean, for me, put him in MLS, see what happens. I think an MLS team would be willing to take that on. Would it be funny if it was a Chicago Fire with Greg Berhalter and Gio Reyna? But no,
God forbid he's in that playing style.
Shut up. What about
no, I mean, look, I think he needs to move. Yes, NYCFC would be like a romantic return. I also feel like there's probably a decent market for him in Europe. I mean, I don't, I think that, yes, like the sample size is low, and that's part of the problem, right? Is that we just haven't seen enough from him, and he hasn't been able to get on the field. And yeah, time for fresh waters. But as anybody remembers before a World Cup, like there are guys who pop up and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're making this crazy surge. Oh, this guy's in great form. Oh, in the pre-tournament friendlies, this guy assisted 4 goals. I never would have believed it. And there's the opposite too. Guys get injured. Sucks. It happens, right? I think he's going to make the World Cup roster. I think it's going to be mostly fine. But I do think his situation is not great right now. The headline, yeah, you don't need to give up on anyone in a national team picture. You should always be scouting, looking at the numbers, talking to the players, seeing how they feel when they get called in, having the conversations. That's part of running a national team. I think although Pochettino and his staff are on their first time doing it, they know how it works. I think they're fine. And maybe that sort of, not mentorship necessarily, but that sort of wisdom from a Pochettino, where it's not someone he's worked with like a Berhalter and has, whatever family baggage there was, could be helpful in sort of guiding him toward his next move. I hope he ends up well. And, I think like I'm rooting for the kid. I think it's just been a lot of things that like just sort of seem like a bummer around his situation.
22.
He's 22. And he's a young kid playing elite soccer. It'd be great to see him sort of have that resurgence. And even resurgence, man, like it's like what are we talking about, man?
Right. Well,
I get it. It's elite sport. I get it. I'm not saying he's doing well and like, oh, good job, man. He deserves to go to the World Cup. No, you have to prove it, but I think the opportunity is still there for him, but he does need to find a better situation for his club play.
And in a stunning development, that the Mamelodi Sundowns will get mentioned 2 weeks in a row on the Hex. If you were Gio Reyna right now, you've got Dortmund in Club World Cup against Fluminense, Ulsan, and the Mamelodi Sundowns. Would you choose to play against the Mamelodi Sundowns in Club World Cup, or would you be on the U.S. national team for the Gold Cup?
I thought you were going to suggest that as a destination for him.
I thought so too. I was like, damn,
An Orlando Pirates guy or a Kaiser Chiefs.
Kaiser Chiefs.
Yeah. Would you do Club World Cup or Gold Cup? I mean, that's an interesting question as well.
If he plays in the Club World Cup.
Where are you going to play? Honestly, that's the question he needs to be asking about all these decisions. Where am I going to be in the best place to succeed? Where am I going to play? I was going to say it's such a mess. Maybe that's not totally fair, but this whole, Club World Cup and some teams are in it, and it just really affects a lot of things. I think it's going to be a good Gold Cup. The draw was this week. I'm like, oh man, there's some great matchups, but yeah, there's some big absences and some big question marks. So.
Well, that'll wrap us up for the week. Shout out to the Mamelodi Sundowns. Shout out to everyone who has stayed till the end. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to The Hex, and we will catch you next week.